Hi everyone, this is Striker here, and welcome to episode number 2 of my Redout Advanced Strategy Guide series. In this video, I will be covering the Roaring Waters track from the Sequoia location and explain to you how this is one of the more deceptive tracks in the game from a strategic point of view. Now, I have titled this video, Give Me a Break. Give me a break? Surely we don't use the brake when we play Redout. Well, this video may surprise you because I want to illustrate how usage of the brake in very specific scenarios can massively improve your ability to take tight turns and correct errors. Let's watch this lap in its entirety and then go over the footage. Alright everyone, so now that we've watched the lap in real time, I want to take this opportunity to slow it down, break down some of the specifics of why I feel this track is a bit trickier and more deceptive than it would initially appear, and also talk about that concept of braking, as I had discussed in the beginning of the video. So here we are. If you can see my mouse, I'm going to be pointing out certain things with the lap. This is the final left-hand hairpin before the starting line. My biggest tips to you here would be to try to get as much speed as you can coming into the start line. So when you come around this turn preparing for your time trial lap, most likely you will have a full boost gauge, as you can see right here. So I want to try to get a clean bounce off that left wall, and then I'm going to provide a little bit of micro boosting right to the start line. So you can see I'm a little bit down. But right here as we cross the line, now I'm draining. So you see that drain? And what that allows me to do is get the most amount of speed in this initial straightaway leading into this first turn. Right there. Now, let me back this up a little bit. This turn makes or breaks your entire lap. It looks simple, but if you don't cut this corner especially tight to the right, as I am right here, you're going to lose a lot of time because otherwise this turn becomes very loopy. So in terms of perspective, it's a little bit foggy. So not only is it a loopy, deceptively fast turn, but it's visually obstructed. So what you have to do is try and draw a straight line here. So you see where my ship is, you see where my cursor is. I want to try and manage a straight line to a wall bounce right here, and then if I cut the turn correctly, I will have a rather straight line through my next boost. This could have been done a little bit better in this lap, but you'll see as is how I'm close to that right side wall and I boost in a relatively straight line. So look at my ship. We just came up a right turn, but my ship is very straight. So that's kind of like what I talked about in last week's video in Mobius Speedway, is relaxing the hands and not oversteering. Once again, those same concepts apply here. So if we bring this a little bit forwards, there's my next point. So what I did there, I drew a straight line to my first wall bounce, and then I tried to initiate another straight line through my boost into that second wall bounce. Now, if you take this turn a little bit closer to the right side, it is possible. So let's say I were over here with my ship, which is doable. You can then take this left turn without having to bump the wall. Now, if you watch the lap again in real speed, you'll hear that it's not the greatest wall bounce. So I did lose a little bit of speed there, but in my testing, it doesn't seem to make a huge difference whether you bounce or not if it's a light enough bounce. But like I said, I am not completely confident in this lap, and I definitely feel it could be improved, that might be one spot to do so. Now, after I come out of this wall bounce, I want to draw a third straight line right to that loop. So even though we're partially obstructed by a left turn, given the momentum of the ship, you can see how I just worked my way right around there, and by the time I get to this loop, I'm on the right side, and I am once again going straight. Now, if you notice the ship and power-up selection, I was not the inventor of this meta, so I can't say for sure whether this is the optimal option, but what I can say is OET gives us some flexibility in being able to utilize micro boosts in between our turbo boost spots. So, what I can do here, even though I don't have much boost left, I can fully drain. You can see that boost right there as I came over the hill. So watch that again, see that? So I'm boosting, boosting, boosting because I do have a little bit more of an area here that I can gain speed. So this is the first deceptive corner in this track, which there are two of them. So this would appear like you can once again cut a few straight line angles like we have in those past few turns and like we do on a lot of other tracks. But in this case, what we want to try to do is apply a light wall bounce one time and then create a gradual curve as we come around that next corner. So watch that again. Let me back this up. So let me try to go frame by frame. You see how I'm creating a gradual corner right to here. And what this gradual corner allows me to do is cut off the corner on the right side here. Now, in the best of laps, I would be able to initiate a turbo boost right around here if I'm coming at this wall in the proper angle. If I were to have done it here, I would crash into the wall because I'm a little bit too far over to the right, given the way I approached this segment here. But it's worth noting that, at least in the short-term checkpoints, which are the ones in the waterfall, it does lead to a time gain. Now this is really nice though. Once I angled properly, I hit that boost and I really get the benefit of that straight line where I'm carrying most of my speed. See that boost? Carrying it through a very straight line. Now, I remember when I was less experienced at this game, the next hill here is a little bit challenging because it's blind. What you need to know is eventually you need to be drifting a little bit to your right, otherwise you're going to hit this wall here coming up on the left. See how it slopes and then it approaches? So, if you can create a little bit of a straight and a hair of a turn. So see how right about there I start to nudge the ship just a little bit over, and basically I'm able to strafe and clear that left side. Once I do so, I need to be once again hitting the left strafe really hard because I want to try to straighten out this angle, not have my ship fly into this right barrier. Now, I will talk about wall bouncing in more detail in hopefully next week's video, but just know that every single wall bounce loses you a certain amount of time. Whether that time is worth spending based on the speed you would lose in a curve, that's a track-by-track kind of feeling out process. But in this case, we want to minimize the amount of wall bounces throughout this track. So, notice how I get nice and straight right here. So the waterfall section here, once again, we deal with a little bit of visual obstruction, but all you have to think about is not contacting in any walls and trying to stay a little bit smooth. This could have been a little bit smoother, but this is the same concept as last week. Let's relax the hands. Let's just try to glide through this very naturally. Now, coming out of the waterfall, once again, we're hitting a blind corner, but through repetition, you will start to learn the ins and outs of the slopes. What I want to do here is come into this turn in a position where I can drift near the left. So you see how I start to angle the ship? I want to get real tight to that left side and then hit my boost. So I want to play this just so you know what's coming up. If we boost, we have a long relative straightaway. Once we contact the wall, ignore the bounce for now, but once we contact the wall, now we're in a position for another turbo. So the sooner we can boost here, which is once again coming out of the waterfall, the faster we can boost coming off of the last left-hander. But here's the problem. If you boost too early, let's say we boosted right here, you can get away with navigating straight if you're further to the right here. But because you still have to slope a little bit to avoid this next little barrier, what you're going to do is drop your speed to about 1300, 1290, 1280. And if you look at where I'm at now, I'm at 1424, I'm carrying to 1350-ish, 1300. So all that speed, now we're looking at 50 to 100 kilometers per hour slower in the longest straightaway in the entire track. And that's a huge loss of time. So when you come out of here, you want to think about a slight delay before we hit that boost where we can then travel relatively straight. If we can hug this little section here on the left closer, this slope of the track will facilitate you keeping a straight line, so that's something that could be improved right there. Now, all of those things you might be saying, man, there's a lot to think about there. Hence the term, give me a break. But here's where give me a break really comes into play. So for most novice pilots in Redout, we're always told that we want to always be driving forward. We don't want to slow down, and we don't want to use the brake. But if we can use the brake for a very brief period of time, the brake allows the ship to basically decouple its friction from the ground. So we can initiate a very rapid swivel of a drift. When we approach a turn that's as drastic as this, at these kinds of speeds, we need to very rapidly swivel and bounce. If you go back and listen to this lap in real speed, you'll hear the ship scrape the slide. You'll hear the slide in the ship. So watch this. How I swivel very rapidly, and now I'm in a position to boost straight out. If we do the traditional method that many of you have seen, the donut diagram, if we do the traditional drift, counter drift, and then turn to the same side, what's going to happen? Most likely, you will not be able to clear this wall and that wall at the same time, because now, instead of the ship traveling forwards, the ship is going to be turned so the long ends of the ship are on the right and the left. So now we made our ship much wider, and we will most likely crash into one or sometimes both of those walls. But if we can drive straight through it, and then use the brake for the swivel, now notice how I've cleared, and I get a very light bounce. So there was talk on the Discord server this week. If anyone hasn't checked out the Discord, it is www.discord.gg/redout. There's an awesome community there, just a small plug. But we had some talk this week about, do we grind this? Do we actually create a grinding effect on this turn? The answer is no, because if you swivel properly with the brake, you'll hear one clink, and then you'll be off and running on that next straightaway. Now the final thing in terms of positioning here, going back a little bit, as we cross through the boost pad here, notice I'm getting to the left. I don't want to be somewhere in the middle of the track. I'm actually barely touching that boost pad here, because that right-hand barrier sneaks up on us. So right here. So we need to be a little bit more to the left. So when we're coming at this at high speed, see where my cursor is. There is daylight there, right to that wall on the back there. If you're too far to the right and you cross the middle of the boost pad, most likely you will not see this gap, and you'll have to turn left to re-angle the ship better to get through it. In races, that might be acceptable. In time trials, that is a death sentence. And finally, we take the swivel, we create that slight bounce, we smoothly roll around the turn, and then we boost to the finish line. Now, watch the way my ship is positioned here. I actually oversteered quite a bit coming out of the turn, so let me back up. So right about here, I should have stopped my left hand steering by now, but look, I'm still going. So even as I'm boosting, I'm still turning. It would have been better if I were somewhat in the middle of this boost pad, where I could have just glided into the finish without as much possible speed loss. But all in all, that was still a very good lap on a relatively tricky track. Now, in closing, I wouldn't say that this is the best track to learn the game with. It requires some more advanced techniques when it comes to cutting angles and using the brake, but it does help to know that usage of the brake will allow you to more efficiently travel through the very tightest of turns in this game. Give you another example, the left-hander at the beginning of Underground Tour kind of has the same idea. And the last right-hander of Spirit can play with the brake as well. Also, if you're driving in a race, let's say we're in an online multiplayer race, and you just happen to take a bad angle to turn, and you know you're about to slam into the wall with the front of the ship, tap your brake real fast. Create a swivel. Now you might lose some speed, but you'll hit the back of the ship against the wall instead of the front, and you'll be good to go moving forwards. Thank you all so much for listening to this video today, and if you like the content, please like and subscribe, and I look forward to bringing you more Redout Advanced Strategies in the future. Thank you.